All right, everybody, welcome back. It is Mr. Brian and my good friend Mr. Betcher here for Breaking Down Security.
What's up?
We just keep finding people in our green room. We had Michael Goff for his two-part interview on the malware stuff, and this week we've got Marcus J. Carey, who's another local Austinite. Well, he's not local to me, but we got him. We got him on our podcast here, and we wanted to pick his brain about some projects he's working on and some other his thoughts and viewpoints on the information security community at large. So, welcome, Marcus, to Breaking Down Security.
Hey guys, happy to be here.
Awesome. We talked and have talked on Twitter. You and I have quite a bit in common. We're both ex-Navy people. I was an aerographer's mate, so I didn't do a lot of security, but you actually started out in the Navy doing what we would consider almost, in a way, a red team and offensive type security. Could you maybe tell us a little bit about how you got your start with that information security stuff?
Okay, so I'm originally from Texas, so I'm back home now. So when I was 18, I joined the military, and I did pretty good on the ASVAB, so they gave me a pretty good rate, which was I think it's cryptologic technician is the proper term.
Yep.
And communications was the caveat behind that. But the rate was called CTO, so a lot of Navy people could probably understand what that means.
Yep.
And so I kind of compare it to like if you've seen a lot of movies where they have these spies and the spies are in like a little van, and there's that nerd guy that's actually doing all the comms and stuff for them and all the tech stuff for them. That was kind of like me, so. I got to actually participate in a lot of stuff, a lot of SIGINT, some ELANT, and all kind of cool stuff. And actually what's cool about that is we were actually like a tenant command of NSA. So I since I was 18 years old, when I was 18 years old, I actually worked for the National Security Agency.
Whoa.
And that was pretty cool. So I did, I was in for 8.5 years. The whole time, it was, I did NSA stuff.
So you did 8 years. Was there any reason that you got out? You got disenchanted, or you just ended your enlistment?
Actually, I did twice the time I wanted to.
Oh, really?
I can't even lie. I wanted to do 4 years. I got married. I was stationed overseas, and then I was stationed in Hawaii, and nobody gets out of Hawaii. So I transferred to Fort Meade, where I was stationed at the actual agency, and I worked at the agency for 3 years or something as a military person, and then I got out and I did the whole contractor thing.
Were you in long enough to get a pension?
Nope.
He's a Texas veteran, so he's just a little better than a regular veteran. He gets like all the benefits of living in Texas and being a Texas-born a native.
That is true. That is so true. I love it. Texas is great for vets.
Yep.
Especially if you came in here. Yeah.
After that, you stayed in the Maryland area and you started what was called DojoSec. Is that correct?
Absolutely. Dang, I haven't heard that in a while, but yeah, DojoSec. I started a monthly security meetup. It was different from a lot of security meetups because it just wasn't one speaker. It was like a mini conference every month. And so we did that for probably about a year or so, I believe. We had a bunch of DojoSecs. I also did 2 conferences under that same kind of branding called DojoSec. DojoCons. I did 2 of those, and then I ended up moving to Texas again. I moved to Texas. I originally moved here because I was working for Rapid7. So I worked for Rapid7 almost 2 years, and then I got let go from Rapid7, and I've been doing pretty much my own thing ever since.
That's cool.
So you're freelancing.
Well, I do a lot of stuff. I've actually, behind the scenes, I've been building security products for several people behind the scenes. I've been doing a lot of coding. I've been doing pen testing. I've been doing web application testing. Secure code, all kind of other interesting stuff. I have a lot of people that are quite well known come to me for like special stuff. So, and it's been pretty cool. And besides, I've been making my own stuff too. And so I've been focusing a lot on web application development over the last 3 years. Even when I was Rapid7, I was doing that too. So
web app development or security for web app?
Well, web app development, but all the web apps that I write are have a security spin on them, right? So,
Hmm.
you know, I've actually written a penetration test framework that's proprietary for somebody, where I take in like ridiculous amount of APIs and all kind of stuff, and I pretty much automate it like the pen testing process. For instance, I mean, ThreatAgent.com, I built that site that does a lot of recon and all kind of other stuff. I built HoneyDocs and coined that term HoneyDocs. So I've done a lot of stuff, man. Everything I do is related to security. And the latest thing, of course, I'm working on, and it's going to be my primary focus for a while, is FireDrillMe, and that's a site that I built that allows people to create what I call fire drills for cybersecurity, where you can actually create a drill, and a drill imitates what an attacker would do. And so that's the latest thing that I'm doing.
So how is that different from a pen test, like a web app pen test?
Okay, so the difference between what I'm doing in a penetration test is a lot of organizations get pen tested like once a year, maybe twice a year. It depends on what their requirements are. So what I've done is I've actually took a lot of what you would say intrusion attributes, whether it be DNS, whether it be certain kind of behavior, whether it be beaconing, all kind of things that malware does. I've actually created a non-malicious botnet that people can like deploy on their network without any installation. So what the equivalent would be is like since incident response teams rarely have the actual opportunity to kind of like train in a safe environment. And sometimes when a pen tester comes, they actually try to respond to the pen tester, but usually they just get totally owned anyway because they don't kind of understand what they're doing sometimes.
Right.
Many times they do because I think that they have it's a high level of atrophy, like, you know, muscle atrophy when, you know, you haven't used your muscles in a long time.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's the same thing with incident response on many networks. Say, for instance, you get a new SIM in, and then you don't use that SIM for incident response. So what happens is you kind of forget how to use it in that manner, or you forget how to look at your firewall logs. You forget how to do endpoint investigations, incident response. So what I built a solution to actually let people do that on demand. They light off what I call a fire drill, and when they do this drill, they actually develop those incident response muscles, those forensics muscles. They actually can determine if their IDS, DLP, and all that stuff works like they thought it did. And they can do this year round, you know. So that's pretty much what it is. I don't want to turn this into an infomercial, but that's kind of like my passion right now.
Yeah.
Not just my product. It's just to just have people to just invest in people and train the people and just be more focus more on people and not so much the tech. I think
like the workout makes you healthy, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, and I need some of that in my life right now too. I need to work out and I need to do some fire drills.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, okay, so you mentioned that you're developing a tool in information security. But from what I understand, your opinion of most information security tools is not very positive. Is that it? Do you believe that it's an overabundance of tools or an overdependence on tools?
I think what I see in the industry a lot of times is I see that people come out with one good idea and then they kind of mess it up by adding a lot of stuff on top of it. And everybody, and I think the game it's a marketing game where say you're good at X and somebody else is good at X, but then somebody else adds Y, then everybody else has to add Y, then everybody else has to add Z. And so you kind of get further and further away from the actual core problems that you actually try to solve, and then you just have a bunch of bloatware.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what I see with the information security industry in general. I think that most tools do probably one or two things really well, but you still have to pay like $1 million for that product when you only need one or two things. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it's just, you know, the feature creeping, the feature add-on, it's just bloatware, man. So I wish. Go ahead.
Oh, do you have any examples? Have you tested any yourself and found out that they just don't work like advertised? I know Tripwire did something really well, and now I don't know, maybe they're through acquisitions, they're adding a bunch of features like vulnerability scans and things like that?
A couple of years ago, maybe 5 years ago, everybody was trying to do unified security. I think it's kind of like a compliance play at the root of it, is because that to do all these, these requirements come out for like stuff like continual monitoring and all that stuff. And so if you just do one thing, that's not continual monitoring. So everybody had to do X, Y, and Z to match whatever the standard was. So I think that's actually a core problem of where, a tripwire would, be really good at that one thing. And then they were doing compliance stuff. And I mean, I don't know what they're doing now, but not to dig on tripwire or anything. But so, I mean, yeah, so I see feature creep in everything. Every product pretty much has some kind of feature creep. But what's funny though is this, right? I actually look back in the day where there was tools like Nessus, Snort, and like things that did one thing and did one thing killer. I think some of those products still exist, and they're kind of like the best products still out there. There's competitors that do the same thing, but still, I mean, they're still doing the thing. At a core, those products are still those products. I think people get in trouble when they try to make one product do everything everybody else does. So that's what I think.
Aren't they just trying to compete though with the guy that scooped them the first time? I mean, keeping up with the Joneses kind of thing, and then everybody ends up being the same thing to everybody.
I think that's a problem. Like I said, people buy into the Gartner, the Magic Quadrant, and all that stuff, and they have this checklist of this product should do X, Y, and Z, this, that, and the third, feature 1 through 10, and all of them need to compete on that, and I just think that's just sad, really. I think you do what you do it really well, and that's it. Like Wireshark, I mean, I use Wireshark all the time. Actually, when I was working in the government circles, I actually saved the company, a contractor. Contractor called me in and said, "Hey, can you troubleshoot this product? We don't know what's going on." They thought it was a network-related issue, and I actually used Wireshark to figure out it wasn't a network-related issue. The programmer basically transposed the HTTP with a HTTPS, where everything was supposed to be SSL for the web app, but it was trying to pull all these calls from HTTP. So by looking at, through Wireshark, I noticed like, wow, you can't do HTTP. It's a firewall here. It does SSL only. And so they was about to scrap this government project. It was a multi-million-dollar project too. Wow. And I figured that out in Wireshark. So, just by looking at the source, and even looking at the source of the page eventually, I look at Wireshark. Wireshark looks like this. And then I go look at the source, and the source actually confirms what I saw in Wireshark. So I'm like, wow, cool. You have this is your problem. But I think that even like things like that, it's just sad because I don't think a lot of people are doing like have the skills to do packet capture analysis, understanding HTTP, understanding the source code on a web page that is trying to load, something in plain text when it should be doing an SSL. I think that those are like small little intricacies that hopefully everybody could grasp, But I think we're lost our roots. We're not geeks anymore. We're kind of, we're all philosophers.
That's right. And you had a little blurb on thin slicing where you said, hey, we need to learn the basics because a lot of big problems are solved by something really simple, like what you just talked about.
Yeah, and I got that from Malcolm Gladwell, which is I like that dude, but he talks about that a lot, about how if you know how the big picture works, you can actually come to decisions really, really quick, and that's why I see actually. I'm not going to harp too much on this, but with a lot of our the thought leaders, I think in information security, a lot of people don't actually really do technical stuff, and so it's kind of unfortunate because I think they're missing out on the vision. It's only so much reading and research and data is going to get you. If you actually get yourself in the trenches, you're going to have experience, like real experience, and sometimes experience is going to beat all the research you can do. So I just hope that some people that are I think people should just lay off the talking circuit a little bit and actually get back into their craft that they're preaching. So it's like the old saying. It says that got to practice what you preach,
Mm-hmm.
and you gotta preach what you practice.
So
If you go ahead,
you lean towards the practitioners, not necessarily the guys who are sitting there, sort of like the professor of InfoSec. You lean more towards, hey, go out and practice what you're doing. Practitioners should be the real leaders of our industry, right?
yeah, I think so, because the difference is, and there's gonna be people that don't think the other way. I think everybody does have something to offer. Sometimes, during my epic Twitter rants, I think that sometimes people think I'm all for techies, I'm all for technology, and if you can't hack, if you can't code, I don't think any of that stuff. I think there's definitely there's actually a lot of stuff that you can get from thinking and even philosophy in books. Like I said, I quote stuff from Malcolm Gladwell. He's a good writer, and he breaks big problems down pretty good. I'm sorry. My dogs are crazy, man. Everybody has there got two dogs and they're nuts. They're banging on the window and stuff. So I'm actually back in focus now. Okay, good. I'm good.
Yeah. That's okay. Michael Goff had his dogs all up in his office the last couple last hour of his podcast. The thing is, we want to be the H.D. Moores. We want to be the Jeremiah Grossmans. We want to be the Chris Weisopels. They started out as the people that you're kind of wanting everybody to be. They started out as the analysts or the lowly security engineer. I'm not saying they're lowly, but they're the doers. And these guys are the people who've been there, and for the most
guys doing all the work.
Yeah, they were the ones in the trenches previously, but at some point, don't you want to elevate above that?
Well, my answer to that is that Benjamin Franklin, and later used by Marvin Gaye, and heard it through the grapevine. I think he said something like, believe half of what you see and none of what you hear. So even if you have somebody up there on the stage, and they're associated with legendary hacking crews, or they're associated with this person, or they wrote this and did that. Sometimes, man, if you guys peel back the covers of a lot of people that are famous, quote unquote, and rock stars and all that stuff, they're just like the rest of us. They may be good at one thing, but they might suck at 100 things. So the average person out there may be ridiculously better than that person. And then once you have a name and prestige, some of these people are famous just by the people they hang around with, bro. Or they gave a talk with somebody.
Sure.
So I mean, and I'm not turning down nobody, but I don't believe none of the hype, man. I would just encourage people, man, to just, don't be putting people up on pedestals. So quit name dropping. We all suck. We all need to learn more. And so, I'm not dissing the people you're talking about, but I'm just saying that even those people, they would know that they're weak on stuff. They're good on stuff. Just because you're good on exploitation, don't mean you can build a security program. Just because you were in Loft doesn't mean you're like a super guru or something. Could have been a janitor in Loft or something. You know what I'm saying? So that's what it is, man.
Yeah. No, I agree. And my bad thing. I've seen HD when he talked at the OWASP chapter thing. He talks really fast because he's got a lot to say, I guess, in the hour that they gave him. But I would be afraid to actually meet them because I don't know. They've been given this almost mythic stature, they got this glowy thing around them, and if you talk to them, I'm sure that they're not bad guys, but it's almost like I don't know, like The Dark Knight with Heath Ledger. Everyone's like, "Oh my God, you gotta go see that movie! It's so awesome! He was so awesome! I can't believe it!" And I'm like, "Yeah, I don't think it's going to live up to the hype, even if it was an excellent movie. Even if it was Citizen Kane or whatever.
Yeah. So I know a lot of these guys personally and stuff, and so what I have experienced is that there's this need to they kind of have to always be on because I kind of feel bad for HD I got a really good close friend, Johnny Long. I'm cool with Kevin Mitnick, Dave Kennedy. I know all these dudes, on somewhat of a personal level. So I kind of feel bad for them because they have to always like be on, and it kind of sucks that people kind of not worship these guys, but I'm saying, I saw Kevin at DEF CON and he had like 20 people like following him, like chasing him one time. I was like, wow, dude, for real. And my son actually, my son grew up around hackers. My son's 18 now, so he kind of grew up like around all these hackers. And my son actually was in a guild with Johnny Long on Halo.
Nice.
So my son used to play Halo with Johnny Long all the time. And so I used to laugh because Johnny knew my son. My son was like 12, 13 on the hacker scene. And my son would be like going up to Johnny, talking to Johnny. And people be like, look at this little kid. Like, who's this dude? I want to move out the way so I can speak to Johnny. So it's just like, I feel, I didn't even realize, because, I came up through the DOD ranks and I've always been blessed to be around really smart people. And that's kind of like, I think that I kind of, some of it rubbed off on me, hopefully. I've always been blessed to be around really smart people like that. So, but, I never understood how famous these guys were until I actually went to a conference. And then I saw people like Johnny that I knew, and I would see people like flocking to him. I can't lie. Johnny was actually, people used to be fanboys of him at work. And I used to share office with Johnny, and it would be like a line outside the door for people seeing him. It was ridiculous. I was like, hey, can you like let me scoot by so I can get to my desk?
Yeah, we were talking to Michael Goff about, going to conventions and stuff. We were asking him about, if DEF CON and Black Hat are old and busted, if they've become like, the RSA of security conventions. And I said, all I could vision, because I've never actually been to a security convention, but I've been to Star Trek conventions or sci-fi conventions. Mr. Betcher's actually going to DerbyCon, bastard. I'm still calling you bastard. You're a solid bastard. But all I could think of was kind of equating it to, the mouth breathers at Star Trek who will hang around a star's table hoping that you'll recognize them and acknowledge their presence. And they're like, oh, my God, Will Wheaton spoke to me, or,
he winked to me. Or...
Yeah, he looked in my general direction or something. So
Yeah, that happens, man.
Yeah, man.
I'm not hating on people that do that, but like, have some self-respect, man. Like quit tripping, man. Like it's not cool. And I'm not saying don't approach people. I'm just saying, because actually the people are cool if you actually got a chance to meet them. Anybody can walk up to HD. Anybody can walk up to Johnny. I think Kevin Minnick needs security, but I've talked to Kevin more on Skype and all that stuff than I have talked to him in real life. And so and he's like, why didn't you ever come up to me, man? I was like, because I didn't want to get in the middle of all that drama.
Yeah, you don't want to be that mistaken for being that guy.
Yeah, so. I'm not. So
you don't want to get in line to see him. Yeah. Speaking of getting in line, would you get in line to buy a robot car with your background?
Absolutely, man. I don't really care. I think then you're gonna get me in trouble. But I would say I don't really. Personally, man, I'm not afraid of technology. I don't think people's gonna hack technology and kill me. I'm from the hood, man. Real talk, man. If I go back to where I'm from, man, and I'm scared around there. That's where I'm scared. You know what I'm saying? I'm not really feeling the whole, worried about my life and all that stuff, man. Life is like vapor, man. You know what I'm saying? We could all be gone at any point. You know what I'm saying? So I hate it when people use life to like sell their point. Life is not guaranteed for any of us, and I don't like putting life in. It's sad because I saw some conservative people. And I'm not conservative or Republican. I don't support Obama. And I've got attacked on Twitter sometimes because people think I'm black. I support Obama. I don't really care about Obama. But how it works though is this, right? Like the journalist got beheaded, in Iraq or Syria or whatnot. I try not to pay too much attention to the news. So I saw that they were pretty much blaming Obama for that, as a political thing. I was like, dude, this dude lost his life, and you're making a political thing out of it. And that's kind of how I feel sometimes about people, trying to use the fear of someone losing their life to actually push a certain agenda. Yeah. So, I believe in safety for like safety's sake. But I hate it when people escalate the rhetoric to worrying about terrorists, quote unquote, and terrorists will use it. And like, come on now, man. Look, all this terrorist stuff, you see where that's got us. It's got into a bunch of wars.
Well, I would drive a dump truck to work if it were, feasible or economically, sound. So.
I'd drive one if it got me 100 miles to the gallon. But, I'd like to be able to drive a car and not have to drive with my knees when I'm texting. I don't do that. I don't do that.
It's fun. It's fun to drive cars, man. It would be too boring if you didn't actually get control, I think.
That's right. So let's move to something a little lighter. You mentioned at the beginning that you help with secure coding. Do you actually have customers that you engage with to do? We don't have to mention customers specifically because obviously you can't. But do you engage them into like threat modeling and stuff? Because Mr. Betcher and I have been trying our damnedest to do a podcast on threat modeling, and we have not been able to successfully. I mean, we've got a really big show note document on it, but we've never actually done any kind of specific threat modeling. I was just wondering if you mentioned secure coding. Do you actually go through a customer and do a threat modeling session with them?
No, what I do is I go through source code and I actually tell them what I think that they should change and do in a better way. I recommend that, specifically, I'm kind of like a Ruby guy. So I look at Ruby code. I look at, are they using insecure gems? That's the kind of stuff I do. And just give recommendations on how a hacker would, manipulate parameters or whatever to get something done. So that's the kind of stuff I do. Now, threat modeling, I've heard a lot of people talk about this kind of threat modeling, that kind of threat modeling. Yeah. I've heard a lot of people talk about threat intel and all that stuff. Yeah. Right? So what do you mean by threat modeling? Just tell me and I can tell you what I think about it.
Actually, I thought threat modeling was kind of what you're doing there, where you're actually doing the code audit and you go, okay, you're thinking in an aggressive manner is to say, okay, yeah, with this gem, I can, gain root, or I can, there's different ones. We were looking at Stride, we were looking at Dread, we were looking at the application security framework from OWASP. We were looking at a number of these different ones. We were trying to record on it, but we're like, we don't really do that at work. We probably should try to find somebody who does do it, maybe, and then do a podcast on that. But what you were talking about there is what I would think threat modeling is. You're taking the code, or you may be sitting down with a developer after you tell them, after you're looking through the code and go, okay, I can do X, Y, and Z with this. Or, do you ever like walk through the flow of the application with them to understand how, the processes work or anything like that?
Yeah, so sometimes I do that. Sometimes I get a lot of pushback on, we think it's fine because X, Y, and Z. And I have to say, well, this is why you want to do that in a better way. Mm-hmm. So as far as threat modeling goes in general, I think there's two different things here. And I think this is a problem with the information security industry, right? I think that we have a lot of white hat related threat models and stuff that we do. Mm-hmm. And I did listen to a podcast where you guys were talking about and debating about the value of recon and all that stuff. So I actually got you guys take on that.
Okay. What do you think? Whose side are you taking, though? Come on, we're keeping score.
I think it totally depends. I think you both have points. I think that overall there's this white hat hacker, the way white hat hackers do things. I don't think that actually translates to the real world. Sure. I'm pretty sure of that, because I think that white hats actually, and this is weird. I think sometimes white hats are our own worst problems. For instance, if I did have an insulin pump or something like that, if I personally had an insulin pump and I had diabetes, I would be more worried at a white hat convention than I would be at home.
You worried about script kiddies and people who want.
I would totally be worried more at a DEF CON or something like that, or a DerbyCon, about my own safety amongst supposedly white hats, right?
Yeah.
And I think that the vulnerabilities definitely exist for sure, and I've actually played a little bit of role writing Metasploit's code and stuff myself. So that stuff exists. The exploitation techniques exist. But sometimes I just feel like sometimes we're our own worst enemies. We come up with, we'll pull we'll pull an exploit out the jaws of security.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, that's kind of unfortunate. So I think that, but overall though, I think that we have our own thing. Some things I think that are absolutely insane for the most part. I think a lot of like internal pen tests are kind of crazy to me.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, for one, it's a guaranteed 100% success rate. Everything's going to get on for 100% sure. And I'm not sure if it's a real world scenario of what your employee actually do X, Y, and Z. And that's where it's supposed to kind of emulate. It's supposed to emulate a real world attack.
Mm-hmm.
Like, but an attack, is a real employee going to do pass the hash and own all the boxes on the network? I don't know.
Yeah.
That's kind of debatable to me, right? Is an employee going to try to get into something he shouldn't? Yeah, for sure. And but I just think that passing the hash and owning every computer on the network, I don't think that's not too beneficial.
Yeah.
No. And sometimes it's all people do. And
Can you argue that you're fixing? Okay, so assuming, like we talked about with Michael, if you give up the endpoint and they get in through external means, wouldn't the internal pen test be reducing the damage once they get inside?
I think you should be able to see somebody move laterally throughout your network. The question is, can they see it? Probably not. So if it don't benefit their security posture one bit, it's kind of wasted time to me. Yeah, you can get totally decimated, but what can you do about it?
Sure.
So that's the thing. No, I mean, and I know people make a lot of money doing it, but hey, I don't know. I mean, and if you think you're providing value, that's good. I mean, and some people are different. Some people can actually say, look, this is why this is valuable, and they can articulate it. That's fine. But some people are just going through, just compromising everything they can.
Yeah.
And just turn over a report. That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can definitely see your point. I mean, if you just let somebody do a pen test and they just pwn every system on your network, is that helpful? I don't know. Maybe you should try to work with the pen tester more and try to figure out what they're doing and what you're doing and how to make what you're doing better. And
actually a good pen tester would absolutely understand, and they would understand how the business works and how they could actually prevent some of the stuff happening. But sometimes there's no prevention for some things, and that's why, like, it's like the whole club and the baby seal thing. Why?
Yeah. Yeah. So it sounds like you go to the John Strand School of Penetration Testing. It's not just come in, run your Metasploit, do your little bits. He believes in a holistic approach too. You come in, you find out, policies and processes and working from the basics. You got to have the basics to build upon your structure, or you're just going to fail.
If that's the John Strand approach, I totally agree with that.
Do you do a lot of penetration tests where you can go in and have that amount of time to do that kind, or do they just want a box checked for compliance purposes?
Most of the stuff I've been doing has been external stuff, so I don't go in and own all the boxes.
Okay.
But I have did some interesting scenarios with Johnny at DC3 where I used to own all the things and do something similar to that. Oh, it's one more thing. I just make sure that we talk about China real quick, because I don't hear a lot of people talking about China like I talk about China.